And we welcome you into the Sam and Cole podcast, thanks to the support of Champion Cycle, of course. Sam, who is, what is that, a carrot or a Cheeto?
That's that health food, that carrots,
Carrot. I think you've lost some weight, by the way, have you not?
Not on purpose.
Oh.
Well, I just have, of course, at Lent every year I give up chips and fries, so that always helps.
Yeah, that'll do it.
And then I rode my bike in Belgium with the guys from Champion Cycling.
Right.
And, I rode 500 miles in 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks. So, that'll do it.
Yeah. And sometimes it's funny, too,
Can't
because
keep that pace up, by the way.
No. As a guy who, as a bigger guy, sometimes just doing a little bit of work, watching a little bit what you eat, and it's maybe it's not always directly perceptible by other people or by people who don't see you very often, but sometimes you go, "Boy, the suit just fits a lot better than it used to."
A little bit, yeah. That's a lot. By the way, that's a lot more readily apparent when you're your age. Okay, that doesn't necessarily happen at this age as often as quickly.
All you have to do is ride 500 miles. It's no big deal.
That's all you got to do is put 500 in.
Exactly. Speaking of losing some weight, the Jaguars opened OTAs on Tuesday. As we are recording this, they've opened OTAs, the organized team activities, which, by the way, is such an inside term. Just call them off-season practices. It's.
I guess it's part of the collective bargaining agreement that they have to call it that, so that it can't be mandatory. It can't be called a practice. The coaches can't step over the line. There's very specific rules for this 3-week period, what the coaches can and can't do between now and the first mini camp, which comes up that middle of June.
I just think, though, that calling it OTAs is sort of an exclusionary thing. I don't know how many really big football fans have asked me through the years, what is OTAs, off-season training or something?
I get it wrong. Half the time I talk about it on the air.
I just got to the point at one point when I was doing, particularly when I was on OKV doing sports reports every day, or when I was on 1010XL doing, updates every day, I would just call it off-season practices because
right.
OTAs doesn't tell anybody anything. It's
organized team activity, on-field team activity. Call it whatever you want. It's underwear practice is what it is.
By the way, isn't everything that an NFL team does an organized team activity? Isn't when they take the team bowling one day in training camp, isn't that an organized team activity?
That is correct. So
isn't eating at the training table an organized team activity? So, but anyhow, so they got it started, and you said you think Blake Bortles is clearly svelter.
Yeah, there's no question that, and I talked to Bortles about this when we did that charity thing at 17 at the stadium course, and he said, "Boy, it was great to have an off season where I just could do quarterbacking, work on quarterback things. I didn't have to worry about what's it like to get in a 3-point stance and stay down there to run a 40 or to do a vertical or a standing broad jump." He really was excited that he was able to do so many things that specifically work toward his craft. So some of that, I guess, he decided he wanted to be lighter. That's not necessarily always a good thing. So we'll see what the Jaguars decide. But I think he looks 12 to 15 pounds lighter than he was.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You hear that from players all the time, especially young quarterbacks. And I always wonder, does it really help your draft stock to work on your vertical and your standing long jump and your 40-yard dash if you're a quarterback? No. I don't think it does a thing for your draft stock, and I think, frankly, that's one of the reasons, there are others, but one of the reasons why quarterbacks tend to struggle as rookies. One is they're coming into a whole new system, whole new style of play, but, listen, if you're built like Blake Bortles, you're not... It doesn't seem... I don't get the fascination with going out and killing the combine.
Think about last year's so-called off-season for him. On a good team, because he was a good player, he made them a good team. They played on New Year's Day or a New Year's Day game. So that takes you to January 1. Now all of a sudden, you're working toward the combine. So the next 6 weeks are trips to different places.
Your quarterback camps and speed
quarterback
camps
camps,
and
speed camps. Now you're working on the combine. Then you go to the combine. So that takes up, let's say that takes up 10 days in February. Now all of a sudden, now you're working toward your pro day, which is sometime in March. Then the draft comes up. You get picked. And so you've taken 3.5 months, and you haven't really known an offense you're going to run. You haven't worked on your skills specifically. I mean, you've just tried to stay in shape and as you said, kill the combine. And then in your pro day, you're asked to throw the ball and throw on the run and all kinds of stuff. So this year, what he does is he goes to California, he works with some very specific quarterback coaches, which there are plenty of them out there, whether it's the House or Whitfield or whichever one you want to pick.
You went with Brady's guy, right? You went with Tom Harris?
Yeah, you can go to the Mannings. I mean, there's a dozen places that you can go. But and he admitted that toward the end of last year, he lost a little bit of zip on his fastball because he started to suffer from some arm fatigue. Because if you watch tape of him, he was an arm thrower.
Yep.
Watch tape of Brady. All Brady's arm does is follow his body wherever he's throwing it. So, there are a lot of positive things. First of all, that Bortles wanted to do that. All right. Because if you're the Browns, their first round draft pick quarterback spent his time in rehab. Okay.
Where you don't often improve your throwing fundamentals.
Right. That's correct.
You may improve your throwing up fundamentals, but that's
right. So there you are. You got all that. You got you got him wanting to do it, and then you've got him doing it, and now all of a sudden he comes back and he's got more command of it. He's more confident. That's the thing that you can see in him on the field. Takes the snap, more confident in what he's doing, how he wants to do it, and that it's his team. I think all of those things are part of what's going to make him take the next step. How big that step is, I think, is still the question.
And that's a huge question, and it's interesting because we've watched a lot of young quarterbacks. This is the fourth young quarterback we've watched in Jacksonville. The third who we've watched go from being a rookie to being a second-year player. Leftwich, Gabbert, and now Bortles. Leave Brunell out of it. He had already had a little bit. He learned the ins and outs of being in the NFL. He figured out where the classrooms were in the high school, right, before he really got on the field when he was in
I
Green
love
Bay.
this analogy. Go ahead, because I mean this is a great topic of discussion. Go ahead.
So with Leftwich, to watch what he did, because he played quite a bit as a rookie. Gabbert played quite a bit as a rookie. Bortles played quite a bit as a rookie. To watch that second off season, the second season of OTAs and then minicamp and training camp, to watch that, it tells you an awful lot. But I think you're more likely to find out if there are red flags rather than if there are green flags. Because with Leftwich, we saw improvement from year 1 to year 2. He looked better in that second year, and I would even say that up until the injury that he had against, was it Arizona late in the year, in 2005, right? Which was his third year. You kind of saw small steps forward. There were some things he didn't take steps forward with, throwing motion most notably,
right?
But you saw little steps forward.
Well, he had size 8 feet, so he could only take little steps.
Little tiny steps. With Gabbert, who I think wore 10.5, I don't know that we ever really saw a step.
No, because and here's where you're going. And with Leftwich, he already thought he was really good when he got into the NFL.
Yeah.
And the people around him told him he was really good. And when they tried to change his throwing motion, he complained to Del Rio, and Del Rio said, all right, we're going to stop doing that. Even though...
Which, by the way, I think was probably the right thing to do, because I just don't think you can dramatically change a quarterback's throwing motion. You can change footwork.
Which means that you are more than willing then to give up 2 victories a year because you think your quarterback is good enough to get those back elsewhere.
Right.
Because he's gonna turn the ball over. I mean, it's
he's
just
going to
gonna
get
happen.
hit, or he's going to be late delivering the ball, whatever it is.
And it showed that. So there's that. Gabbert was so timid as a professional athlete. He never could take that step. He didn't have the brain the fortitude, whatever it takes to take that step. I'm not blaming it all on Gabbert. I mean, here's a guy, I think he only played 21 games in college. That's a hard transition to make, to be a first-round pick, no matter what kind of skill set you have. And we both know he had beautiful skills when you watched him in practice.
And he had the obvious obstacle to overcome, that he had come out of Missouri.
Right. and then finally, you get to this guy, Bortles, who's almost the antithesis of both of those guys in every way. Wants to get better, doesn't think he's good enough, thinks he's got a lot to learn, can clearly improve, and is working on it. And his teammates all go to California to work with him. All of those things are the elements that make you a better player. Now, how that translates into being a better team is the question.
Well, so let me ask this question of you. I'm popping this on you. We didn't pre-prep this or anything. But if you're going to start listing the skills or the abilities that make a great NFL quarterback, first of all, the combine stuff is all the way at the bottom. But you'd start one probably with commitment, whatever that means in terms of committing to improvement, committing to learning the offense, mastering the offense, leadership. You mentioned confidence. That kind of goes along with that. Those intangibles actually supersede every tangible thing. Then it gets to the point where, okay, can you make all the throws, and can you make them accurately? Can you make them under duress? Can you deliver on third down? Can you deliver in the fourth quarter? Can you deliver in the red zone? Make quick decisions. So I've just rattled off 7 or 8 different abilities, skills, traits of a quarterback that you'd want, and most of those are not things you can work on in the offseason when you're preparing for the combine.
I'd put it at the top of that list. I'd put fearlessness in the pocket. You have to be fearless there. Yeah. And then everything that you just listed. So if you look at Gabbert, he had none of those first 3 or 4 things. So it didn't matter what other
how good his arm was, how fast he
was. Leftwich, pretty fearless in the pocket.
He was definitely that.
Right? But never developed then the other things that are necessary to be a really good quarterback. Bortles seems to have that ability to look downfield, not worry about what the guys around him are doing. The internal clock where he's got to get rid of the ball. And he's taking those steps forward in terms of his physical ability to be a quarterback.
So the things I really want to see out of Bortles that we didn't see out of Gabbert in the second year, I want him to take more chances with the ball in smart ways. I thought as the season went on, he became very hesitant. You talk about fearless. He was fearless in the pocket maybe, but he was not fearless beyond the line of scrimmage. He did not see the play develop. He didn't throw guys open. You didn't see it developing to the point where he was delivering the ball. You saw some of that early on, but you didn't as the year went on, and maybe it was arm strength was part of that. Confidence may have been part of it too. But that's part of what we need to see with Bortles. And
I'll agree with you, but at the same time, I'll also say his receivers have to take that step with him.
Yes, and he's fortunate.
It's not like he was throwing Jerry Rice open.
Right. No, agreed. And I think Julius Thomas will help a great deal.
Let me tell you, by the way, I mean, this is such a hackneyed phrase. That guy is a man. I mean,
he's put together.
But I mean, when he's on the football field, you're like, man, that guy is a professional football player. Mm-hmm. He's a pro. He's built like a pro. He works like a pro. He talks like a pro. He acts like a pro on the field. He makes everybody around. If you're on his team and you don't want to be better, you better go play for somebody else because you're on the wrong team.
So, and I didn't mean to bring up Julius Thomas in this thing, but I think this is a big part of it. I think a big part of Bortles' next step as well is figuring out when he's in trouble, when it's 3rd and 8, or when the pocket breaks down, or when it's the fourth quarter and you need to pick up 12 yards to keep a drive going. He's got to find that guy. And
Yeah.
Leftwich had the benefit of Jimmy Smith some, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Gabbert had
Nobody
really, and that was part of the issue as well. He had the 1 year when Mercedes had a big year, who kind of became his go-to guy for a while. But so Julius Thomas will help.
I'm just telling you, Julius Thomas is going to step into the huddle on 3rd and 8, and he's going to say, "Look, I'm going to beat that guy with my last step. Throw it to that spot, and I'll catch it."
Yeah.
Big difference when he says that, or Alan Hearns said it as a rookie.
So trust is the other part of this equation that we haven't talked about, and it's trust within the offense. It's trust that the offensive line is going to give him just enough time, and that he can make that throw in a spot that it's not a throw that only his guy can catch, because you see that a lot. Well, if the only guy who was going to catch that was his guy and he didn't, it's incomplete. I'm talking about making a throw where if your guy doesn't make the catch, it might get picked. You got to trust that you can make that throw.
And if you've got Julius Thomas, I take a 50-50 ball with him every time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Maybe you do that with Allen Robinson, who, by the way, may not participate in these OTAs at all, based on this foot injury still hanging around.
That scares you, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's certainly some questions there, but you're right. You got to be willing to throw that 50-50 ball and trust that your guy's the guy that's going to come up with it.
And I don't think you can truly have trust that doesn't require blind faith until you start playing games. And so that's why I think as
by the way, real games too.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Season games.
No, real games. And so, I have been in a position where I was covering every single off-season practice. When I was working for the team, and I was out there for every practice. I was out there and watching, and you break down little things, and you'll learn a lot about little things, or you think you do, and then about half of them, as soon as the preseason games begin, go out the window, and about a quarter of them that are remaining go out the window as soon as the regular season games begin. And we talk about, I had this thought the other day, we had this thought about, well, the NFL season never ends. Okay, it's a great marketing thing. But you know what? It doesn't matter. I mean, it matters for the players to develop and learn the playbook and learn each other and start developing the personality as a team. It doesn't matter worth a hill of beans until the games start counting. I mean,
correct.
And this past year, having basically just covered the occasional practice of press conference and covered every game, you realize that, and it's you can almost get paralyzed with the amount of analysis that you come up with this in the summertime, and there will be stories. There will be stories written if they haven't already been, and stories told about the progress that Bortles has made. And it's not that he's made progress; it's that he's building the opportunity to make progress in this offseason. And that's maybe I'm playing semantics here, but it's the difference between what a guy is doing and what a guy can do, and that's where the gap is right now with Bortles and with so many other Jaguars.
It just is amazing to me, because we go over there, and you're now part of this group that goes over there, I mean, frequently, certainly not infrequently, but we're not there every day.
Yeah.
Because I learned that you don't have to be there every day.
That's right.
Because, but that the guys that are there every day, they look down their nose at you because you're not there every day, and they feel like that they know so much more than you do. You know what? All the things that they know about half of those guys, most of those guys aren't on the team when the season starts. In fact, with the Jaguars, who knows? Even after the final cuts, they've cut 5 or 6 guys and pick up other guys off the waiver wire to fill up the bottom of the roster. So it is it's a fun thing. You get to see the personalities emerge that are going to be on this team. You see the relationship between the coaches and the players. The first time I saw R.J. Soward, Cole, I thought this guy's going to score 1,000 touchdowns.
Right.
I mean, he
barely touched the ground when he runs.
Right. He was so fast and seemed to be open all the time. Guy couldn't play a lick and he couldn't catch. So, I mean, I'll never forget that long ball that was over the middle. I was standing next to Rick Reapers, and Rick Reapers literally said out loud in the press room, "Please catch it." It's the guy we're paying $6 million to catch.
Yeah. By the way, you could wide receivers more than any other position are easy to fall in love with in underwear practice.
Yeah, well, that's true. So it's a lot of fun. 2 more this week, 3 next week, 4 the following week, and as I said, the rules change. And then at middle of June, Jaguars have not announced when, if any of those practices will be open to the public, but when they do, we certainly will let you know. That is something that we're still waiting to hear.
By the way, are you surprised that none of these OTAs are open to fans or anything? This is the first time in a while that the Jaguars haven't had some kind of opportunity for season ticket holders or something to be able to have that one experience in the off season before minicamp, I believe.
I think that it's a signal that they're really interested in finding the guys early on this team who are going to be contributors. That there can be a quick separation here. In the first 2 years with Gus Bradley's coaching staff, the last cuts, all the cuts were probably difficult because the players were so close, because none of them were really that good. So, but now I think that you can look on that field and say, boy, it'd be easy, I think, right now to pick the starting 22, with the exception of 2 or 3 spots, and that is something that maybe you, as a coaching staff, that you want to hone that. You don't want that kind of distraction. We want to let fans in for the mini camp. That'll be plenty for now.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that is all handled. I think there has been, by the way, speaking of inside baseball, I think there has been a change in the way that they're dealing with season ticket holders and more notably with non-season ticket buyers.
Right.
They put all the single game tickets on sale first. They didn't.
Oh, did they?
Which is rare. Usually that would happen sometime in
August
or something.
Yeah.
Instead of selling half packs or partial packs or whatever else, the first thing they did a couple of weeks ago was single game tickets on sale, and I've never seen that happen before with the Jaguars.
Were any of the games more expensive than others?
I didn't check. I'm not a very good candidate to purchase tickets,
Right.
so I didn't check
didn't either,
that.
but a lot of times I'd have to look at the home schedule, but they'll have a higher price.
Steelers come to town, they jack the prices up, and
for some of them.
places will do that.
Kevin is delivering the schedule as we speak, and Carolina, Miami, maybe. That's it.
It's not a great.
I mean, really, Carolina, Miami, Houston, Buffalo, which is London, Tennessee, San Diego, Indianapolis, Atlanta. I mean, none of those are premium.
And maybe that's why too. It's not a great home schedule, so just go ahead and get them out there, sell as many as you can, and figure out what you can do.
And if Falcon fans want to show up, have them come on down.
More power to them. Yeah, that's right. So I wasn't at practice today, Sam, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But is there anything else that really stood out to you? Is there anything else that you think was particularly notable in this first day after talking about how you get paralyzed by analysis?
Right.
Anything else that was really meaningful to you?
That Gus Bradley was willing to admit that Blake Bortles looked better even in this first practice. He said, "Look, we got a long way to go. I'd like to see the tempo a little better. Guys need to get used to how we practice and all the normal stuff." Mm-hmm. But then he admitted that he felt like he could notice, it was noticeable, past the eye test, that Bortles better command, better footwork, better body motion, better arm motion. And it is, to the eye test, it's noticeable right away. And if you remember last year, at this time, every ball Bortles threw looked like a kickoff.
It was wobbling, yeah.
So
I'm shocked that a compliment came out of Gus Bradley's mouth at a press conference.
But he didn't have to be as effusive.
Yeah.
It was the first practice. You didn't
Yeah.
have to.
And it's just one practice, and it's just
Right.
one practice in May, for crying out loud. So I was today busy preparing.
The Jaguars, by the way, one other thing.
Yeah.
They're bigger and faster. They're bigger and faster.
That's a good combination.
You know, you see A.J. Cann on the field. He's bigger than every other backup lineman. That, I mean, they're bigger, they're faster. And they still don't have, Wisniewski's not out there. As I mentioned, Allen Robinson's not out there either.
So today I was in the process of preparing for a neat thing, which is the first U.S. Open Cup match in the Armada's history.
Yep.
And
cool.
It'll be tomorrow in Richmond, Wednesday night in Richmond. And if they win that match, they'll play an MLS team, Columbus Crew, in June. It'll actually be the night of that last training minicamp practice on the 17th. So
on the 17th,
a chance to test themselves against an MLS side in a meaningful contest. And you're fixing your tie, which means you probably got to go do some TV, huh?
Well, 5 or 6 minutes.
I don't want to rush you out here. That was the other side of things here in the off season. While
that is fun. I was glad to see them get the 1 point in Atlanta. Disappointed, obviously, what happened in Minnesota, but because the standings were so close. I mean, it dropped them. They were in second. Now they're in fourth.
They were in third last week and dropped to fourth. Here's the scenario, by the way, to win the spring season. If the Armada win their final 3 matches,
they win out, right?
And if Minnesota beats New York this week, and then Minnesota loses,
which, by the way, is possible because they're
it is possible. Minnesota's very good, and it's in Minnesota.
Right.
Again, we got to get got Miguel Ibarra out there, who's on the national team. Watching him more closely, he is so fast with the ball on his foot, so fast. I mean, it's you can see why Jurgen Klinsmann would like him, but they still have a chance to win the spring season. They need some help certainly, but they get the benefit of playing New York the final match of the spring up there in New York against the Cosmos. So regardless, they've positioned themselves in a good spot here that they should be able to do something. And even if they don't win the spring, they'll definitely be a contender. It appears for the fall, which is a much longer haul, and either fall championship or potentially one of those other 2 spots with the best overall records.
I'll say this too, Cole. Not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday, the Armada will be featured as our team of the week because 4 guys on their roster have escaped war-torn countries in order to come to America. And I know that you know that based on your relationship with them, but certainly I think a lot of fans will be interested in seeing some of that story. Yeah,
some great stories there too, and I've talked to all those guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you present that. It is again, I've mentioned this before. It's one thing to talk to a guy whose grandest travel, who grew up in Columbia, South Carolina, went to Clemson,
right,
and one time went to the Bahamas, all right, versus guys who fled Bosnia and went across the border to Turkey from Iran to try to seek religious asylum. I mean, it's a whole different perspective.
One guy, and I'll tell you this one quick story. One guy on the team got a brand new soccer ball and wanted to go out and play with it, but his mother said, no, they're shooting outside. You have to go hide in your bedroom for a week. Imagine when you're like 6 years old and you have a brand new soccer ball. All you want to do is go out. No, I'm sorry, son. Go hide in your bedroom for a week.
Did he grow up in South Central? No? Okay. East St. Louis?
All right. That's the Sam and Cole podcast. Thanks again to the folks at Champion Cycling for their continued support. 3 locations at Arlington, Jacksonville Beach. And by the way, 4th of July is a big day out there. They're open on 4th of July. If you're at the beach, that's absolutely a place to stop by and say hi on the 4th, which is a Saturday this year, and also on the 3rd, which will be when it will be celebrated. And, of course, stop in and see Phil or Jeff in Mandarin anytime.
All right, that'll do it for the Sam and Cole podcast. Follow Sam on Twitter at Sam Kavaris. Follow me on Twitter at Cole Pepper. You can follow us on iTunes or Stitcher as well, and leave a comment if you like what you hear. Or if you don't, leave a comment too. And we'll just ignore that one. Thanks so much for listening to the Sam and Cole podcast.